Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. Today we are talking about Dunc and Egg. And I'll be honest, this has been quite an epic week for news about everything George R. R. Martin. We've got one of the best episodes of recent memory in the Game of Thrones world. Episode 5 I thought was amazing, of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Plus, we have news of the stage play, which I will talk about a bit more in a moment. Plus, today we had the first trailer for House of the Dragon Season 3. There is a lot of stuff going on. So, we will talk about all of that. This is a Dunc and Egg live stream, so we'll be talking mostly about Dunc and Egg and also A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. But let's just start with, I don't think we need a sort of an introduction to this. But let's start with some questions from my patrons. Let's go with Corvus Corax saying, "Good evening, Robert, Dan, and all. Maekar and Duncan's conversation at the end of the Hedge Knight is my favourite part of the novella. Based on the trailers that we have for the next episode, it looks like Dunc taking on Egg will go much differently. Is there a way for this to happen that doesn't look like Maekar is an oaf? Maekar understanding Dunc's hesitation to go to Summerhall really shows how wise of a king he eventually could be." Okay, so what happens in the book is that the Trial of Seven happens, and Dunc, he kind of goes kind of introvert, starts to think about all of these things, what actually happened, processing it. And he sits there under his tree for a few days, actually. And then Maekar turns up, and Maekar says to him, "Okay, so I've sent Arian off. He's gone. He's in exile now. But Egg, he needs to be a squire. He's at that point in his life. He really needs to be a squire. And he says the only person he can be a squire for is you. So are you going to do it?" And Maekar then sort of goes on to sort of suggest, "Okay, so you can come to Summerhall and you can do the night thing. Your training isn't complete, so someone can come and train you as well, and you can be training Egg, and it'll all be okay, and it'll all be in-house and nice and neat and tidy." And Dunc says, "Actually, no. I need to be heading off. I'm not the kind of person who's just going to go to Summerhall and just like become a part of the Targaryen household." And he does this kind of um, little speech about um, look at your sons, is basically what he's saying. Look at them. Look at Darren. Look at Arian. They had everything that a Targaryen prince could ever want, and look how they turned out. What have you got to lose with sending Egg out with me on the roads, and we'll do the Hedge Knight thing?" And Maekar eventually kind of goes, "Okay," and moves on. So that's what happens in the books. Now, I should say this again, just in case anyone didn't realize, I've not had any screeners for the show. I don't know what happens in episode 6. But what we've seen from the trailer suggests that it goes down a little bit differently. So Maekar gives his little speech about he only wants to be a squire to you. And then Dunc says, "To be honest, I've had enough of Targaryen princes for the time being. It was quite intense this last few days." So then they have like a heart to heart, and I'm sure they will end up together, and the outcome will be exactly the same, but it's how you get there. So is it going to be different? I suspect it's probably going to be quite similar. I think that was just an editing thing in the trailer. I suspect that Dunc will have a kind of not quite a dark night of the soul, but quite an introspective moment. He's talking to all the different people. He's going to talk to Raymond. He's going to talk to Maekar. He's going to talk to Valar. He's going to work out what this all means. And then at the end of all of that, he will go forward as a hedge knight with Egg as his squire. So is this going to undermine Maekar? I think we're just going to have to wait and see. Maekar is the person who makes the decision. No matter what else happens, he is the person who makes the decision on what happens with Egg. It's his son. He gets to decide. So he is the person who will say, yeah, okay, you can go off with Egg as your squire, as a hedge knight. And I would be very surprised if they don't have that bit of conversation between them where Dunc is pointing out what his son's like. Um, because that's such a really important part of the novella. So, yeah, I think it will happen. I don't think it's going to undermine Maekar too much. And yeah, so he will kind of disappear for the next 2 seasons now. He's going to go away and sort of brood in Summerhall, is basically what we're told that he does. So, yeah, I think we're not going to lose out on him making the active decision about Egg. A ginger-bearded geek saying, was anyone done more dirty by this show than Sir Humphrey Harding? Please give the man his flowers in the stream. Will you do a Beesbury for November? Okay, so Beesbury, in case you missed it, the guy had an amazing moustache, and it was dyed yellow. Beesburys are all about the bees, and yeah, so those two, Harding and Beesbury, turned up. They were part of Dunc's 7, but they didn't get much screen time, it has to be said. So Humphrey Harding in particular, he was the guy, if you remember a couple of episodes earlier, Aerion was jousting against him and he just killed his horse. And the horse fell on Humphrey Harding and he broke his leg. And so, what happens in this episode, in the trial, is that he turns up with a broken leg in order to fight against Aerion. So, yeah, there you go. So, you can have your flowers. It wasn't really emphasized on the show. I get why, because this was very much a Dunc-centered episode. I mean, the whole show is very Dunc-centered, but the way that they structured this episode in particular was about Dunc. It was the centerpiece being, and I know that opinions vary on the flashback, but the centerpiece being the get up moment. We showed why get up meant something, and then Egg was shouting get up, and then Dunc gets up. That was kind of like the hinge moment of this episode. And so this was about him. And if they had spent a long time in the first 5-10 minutes of the episode going through all of the people on Dunc's team to say, well, why are you here? Well, why are you here? Then that would have lost a bit of the momentum. So I kind of understand it. But yeah, he should get his flowers, and I'm very happy to do that. Wolfdan the Wanderer, no tourney lance strategy. Yeah, so I do have a question from one of my patrons about this a bit later, but let's answer this one now. One of the things they missed out a couple of things in this episode. One of the things was that Baelor had a plan, strategy, maybe. He said, okay, so this isn't jousting. This is a proper trial of 7. We can use proper fighting weapons because there's a difference between the lance that you would use for tourney fighting, for jousting, and the lance you would use for actually trying to kill someone in a battle. And the difference is twofold. Firstly, the end. If you're in a battle, it's the pointy tip. And if you're in a tourney, then it's sort of like more of a sort of a ball at the end that it all splinters. And secondly, the length. The tourney lances were longer by about 50%. And Baelor said, okay, I've got a cunning plan, guys. They'll be using normal fighting lances. We'll use tourney lances. They're longer. We'll get the hit in first because, like, if they're coming together, the longer lance will hit first, and then we might be able to knock them off and get a little bit of an advantage there. So, no, they didn't include that. Again, this is, I think, is because they did give Baelor a sort of a slightly inspiring speech quite at the beginning, but they didn't go into all of those details. They focused this in on Dunc. So I think the only other thing I would say on that is that when you read the novella, as much as we love to see Baelor as this great knight, you have to accept that the plan didn't seem to work. So Team Dunc lost some people on the first. When they start out 7 and 7 go together, Team Dunc lost people on that first sort of joust, the first tilt towards each other. And so actually the tourney lance idea didn't really give them much of an advantage. Some of the other side were felled from their horse, but one of them, Darren, was going to fall anyway. So, yeah, they didn't do it. A bit disappointing, but I mean, overall, I don't think that was one of the more important things. James Perkins saying, hello, Robert. A short and simple question for you today. Love it. It was often the case that a knight's squire would themselves one day be knighted, both in our world and in the world of Ice and Fire. However, I cannot recall if Egg was ever knighted before he became king. So we're not told, is the answer. The implication, I think, is that he was. But we're not told when or how or who by. If I had to guess, I would probably say this was during the or just after the third Blackfire Rebellion. So the second Blackfire Rebellion, it's not really a rebellion, it was a bit of a planning meeting, happened in the Mystery Knight, the third novella. The third Blackfire Rebellion happens several years later. Egg is 19, I think, at the time. And we're not told many details of it, but we are told that he was courageous. And probably at that point, he got knighted. Now, this is one of those things where George R. Martin doesn't tell us much details, at least partly because he's saving that for a future story. The third Blackfire Rebellion feels like one of the stories he probably wants to tell for Dunc and Egg. In my mind, he is courageous in battle, and after that, Dunc knights him. So that's how it works for me. We don't have any actual evidence of it. We don't know. In terms of knighting people, he does knight people when he's king. Probably, if you're king, you can knight people. It's not just any knight can knight somebody else. So yeah, we don't know, but probably he was knighted before he became king. Probably, or possibly, in my mind, at the third Blackfire Rebellion. Jane, hi Jane, great to see you. Saying, why was it so darn good? Sticking to one storyline, albeit with the backstory, was a true delight. Yeah, absolutely. So, this is the moment where I just sort of say how great I think the episode was. And more broadly, how great the show as a whole has been. I think the biggest win from this has been the way that they took what in the books is just one POV, effectively. This is all from Dunc's perspective. George R. R. Martin did think when he came to the second or third story that maybe he would expand it but then decided, no, this is just from Dunc's POV. And so they pretty much have kept to that, actually, in the story, which means that it hasn't veered off into any of these other elements. It's not gone off into suddenly we get Baelor and Maekar and the King's Guard all talking about important matters of state, nor is it veered off to whatever Lionel Baratheon's up to. It's just about what Dunc is experiencing. And that, I think, has absolutely grounded the show, because it means that we're just rooting for this guy. That's the person we care about the most. We care about Egg as well, because he's there, he's on Team Dunc, but it's like we want this guy to do well because we're seeing everything from his perspective. We never get somebody else just sort of chiming in with like, oh, well, here's another thing to think about. So I think that was the beauty of what we've got here, is it's a simple story told well with many layers behind it, but we only see it from and I say this lovingly, a simple person's perspective. Relaxed like a cat. Hi, Robert. I hope you're doing well. I am, thank you. As a result of doing so many videos on A Song of Ice and Fire and the large time gap between the publication date of the most recent book and The Winds of Winter, what do you think it will be like for you, me, reading The Winds of Winter? Do you expect there to be new elements, or will it be a case of seeing which prediction turned out to be correct? So let's imagine The Winds of Winter turned up, which I have done many a time. I already know what I'm going to do. I will get that book, and I'm gonna book an Airbnb or something like that, away from everyone and everything, and I'm just going to read it, and that's it. And that first read through is just for me. I'm not thinking about content. I'm not thinking about anything else. I'm just going to read it and enjoy the story. Then I will read back a second time, probably listen to it, and then I will start thinking about content and how do I present this and what information do people need and things like that. But that first time will just be me enjoying it, because fundamentally that's what this is about. It's about reading a story that you love. So that's how I will experience it, just as a fan reading the book. You probably won't even see me online for 2 or 3 days while I'm going through it. What am I expecting? There will be things that I'm not expecting, and I suspect that is what I will like the most. I've talked about magic a few times here, and one of the things which is noticeable, and it's not noticeable reading back, if you've only ever read the books as a whole, from beginning to end, not having the pauses between books, then you perhaps miss it. But each book, the magic ramps up. It starts off as a very low fantasy. By the time we get to the Winds of Winter, it'll be quite a high fantasy book. And the type of magic which happens is surprising each time. So when you get Melisandre, as a random example, when you get Melisandre, you think, okay, so she's a fire magician, she can do fire stuff. And then, oh, she can make shadow babies. What's that all about? Then it's like, oh, so she can glamour someone to look like someone else. That's quite impressive. And it's like all the time, George R. R. Martin is adding another thing on, something else that can be done magically. And so I think we will find some magic stuff that we just don't know. We don't understand. It's new and interesting. And that's the first bit of mystery that we're going to get. Another bit is that there will be, because of his writing style, this Gardner writing style, where he's not got it all planned out. He is just following his muse. When his muse takes him somewhere, he will follow that. He knows the end point he's going to, but he will follow his muse. Because of that, there will be things that we're not expecting in terms of where characters go and what they're doing. I've got a pretty clear idea in my mind now of where I think the most likely arc is for each character going forward. I've done various videos on this, but it's like in the Winds of Winter, what do we think is going to be happening to Dany? Well, probably she's going to go up to Vace Dothrak. She's going to get the Dothraki to be following her. She's going to head back down to Marine. She's going to be defeating all the people opposing her there. Then she's going to head over towards Westeros. That seems absolutely fine. That seems like what we all expect her to be doing. But what if, when George R. R. Martin was writing that, he just got some other idea which took him off somewhere else? What if she randomly heads off to a completely different place? That's the kind of thing that I'm really excited by, because the Gardner writer style means that we can never 100% know what's going to happen. We can know what seems to have been set up, but he may well take this in different ways. So I'm excited for the stuff I'm not expecting, probably even more than the stuff that I am expecting. And so, yeah, there will be theories, ideas that I'm expecting to happen. I'm not going to be one of those people who's going to say, "Yeah, I called that. That's happened." I'm sure there'll be some things I will get some kind of like personal happiness that, oh yeah, I thought that would happen and it did. But I will actually be more happy about the things which catch me by surprise, about the things that I go, "Oh, George, thank you. That's amazing." That's the thing I will love. So I think most of all, if you're talking about what the experience of reading it will be for me, it's the being surprised by stuff. It's that I mean, yeah, I've got this channel and people listen to what I want to say about this, but I'm a fan. I just want to read this book, and it's the same. If another Dunc and Egg story comes out, I just want to read it because I love it. So I'm not there trying to like tick off. That's my theory, right? That's my theory wrong. I just want to read the story. Wolfdan the Wanderer. Spoiler. Yeah. So spoilers. The rule on this channel has always been book spoilers are fine. Show spoilers are not. I don't have any show spoilers. I do not know what happens in episode 6. But book spoilers are fine because the books have been out for many years now. Wolfdan the Warrior. Spoiler: the potential slip that Dunc survives Summerhall. What are your thoughts? I have got some questions about this. So, well, I'll answer this now, and when I get to those Patreon questions, then if there's any more, I will add to it then. So this was Dexter Sol Ansel, who's the actor who plays Egg. He was doing some kind of promo stuff with Peter Claffey, who plays Dunc. They were on, I'm going to say, Irish TV, and they were making sock puppets for reasons I do not understand. But they were talking about, the interviewer asks a really kind of like safe, easy question, like, what did George R. R. Martin say to you about your characters, or something like that? And then Dexter says, yeah, so we know, the stories go all the way up to Summerhall, but we also know that Dunc survives. And then Peter Claffey's like, oh, no, we're not supposed to say that. So this seems like an inadvertent slip, letting a little bit of information out that George R. R. Martin had told them. Now, I should probably say straight away that Dexter Saul Amstel, I hope he doesn't beat himself up about this, because the internet went crazy for it for a little while. Um, uh, and it does feel like quite a big spoiler for the books, but I don't I hope he doesn't worry about it. The fandom love it. This is if ever there was a moment that was very those actors being their characters, this was such a Dunc and Egg moment. So I hope he doesn't beat himself up about it. But um, what are my thoughts? Um, my first thought was to go back to the books and see why it was that I assumed that Dunc died. And it's pretty clear to me that having reread it, it's never said. It's implied, but it's implied by the fact that he's not there afterwards. So, Aegon V, it's implied he dies as well. We're never actually told, and he died in the fiery inferno, but there was a new king the next day. So, yeah, it's pretty clear he died. For Dunc, we're again not told that he died, but we're told lots of people died. We're told he did something heroic, and then we're told there was a new Lord Commander of the King's Guard pretty quickly afterwards. So either he did die, or he didn't and kind of snuck off and let everyone believe he died, or he survived and just took himself out of the equation, quit the King's Guard, and went off and did something. So I will talk about what I think he might have done when I get to the questions from my patrons, but as a point of clarification, yeah, it kind of makes sense to me. I had bought into this idea that Dunc and Egg die at the same time. It felt poetic, it felt right, I liked it. But, I mean, George R. R. Martin isn't a writer who just writes easy, happy endings. So perhaps the ending that we've got is that Dunc survives and he is absolutely guilt-ridden because he's the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. First of all, his friend is dead. And secondly, he has made a vow to protect the king, and the king is now dead. What's he going to do? He probably was being valorous at the time. It may well not have been his fault, but the king still died. And that's a kind of tragic extra layer to this. Some people call me modest, saying you have entered the tourney. Pick your weapons. Well, if I'm in the lists, then obviously the tourney lance. But I think as exciting as the mace Maekar was wielding was, I think a big two-handed sword works best. Trisha Brady saying Game of Thrones season 8 put me off this world in general. Listening to your vids, though, I decided to binge this show, and thank you. I love it. Book ordered. Oh, that makes me happy. Yeah, so I'm being such an evangelist for A Night of the Seven Kingdoms because it's like, it's just so refreshing. Such a palate cleanser that it's just back to basics. Good storytelling, good acting. Um, if you listen to Ira Parker, the showrunner, he's often talking about the fact that the budget they had wasn't great, but they made it work. So yeah, I'm a big evangelist for this. Michael Trainer saying, Egg, Aemon, Bloodraven go north during a long winter due to prophecy or fear. Another long winter was that was in 230-236. Another long winter was during 130 to 135. What do we know about the Starks during those times? Possibly there's no Stark in Winterfell. Is Winterfell broken? So the long winters. So you picked up. I think this is a quite important point. In terms of, and I have got a detailed question about this later, so I will come back to this. In terms of when Egg becomes Aegon V, when he becomes king, it was in the middle of a winter, a long winter. It had been 3 years of winter, and there was no sign of it ending. So, and it would carry on for 3 more years, actually, after that. So that felt like a really long winter. Now, it's one of those things that you only really notice when you start digging into this. And Red Mice at Play blog did a really good article on this one, but it's noticeable that when a hard winter strikes, the more prophecy inclined Targaryens start to get a little bit twitchy, which we would expect if what we had in season 1 of House of the Dragon as Aegon's prophecy, the I don't even know, the Song of Ice and Fire, whatever it is we're calling it, this idea that Aegon the Conqueror had this vision, this dream of a really horrendous winter, the cold coming out from the north, and inside that there were the others. If that has managed to be passed down in some way to this generation of Targaryens, they are looking for a terrible winter. At which point they need to have the prince that was promised. So we get, just as another random example, when Rhaegar heads off on his trip to get Lyanna, winter has come again. Bad winter. As in, there are long icicles hanging from the ramparts in King's Landing. That's how bad it is. Not just like the north gets a bit cold. It's all the way down to King's Landing. It's absolutely freezing. And that seems to send Rhaegar into hyperdrive. Here we've got 3 years of winter and no end in sight. And that's the point at which Bloodraven and co. head up to the wall. What do we know about the Starks during those times? Not huge amounts is the honest answer, because the long winter before that you were talking about, the 130 to 135, that's the just sort of during the end of the Dance of the Dragons, heading on to the period just after that. During that, you get the Starks heading south to support in Team Black in the Dance of the Dragons. But they head back up north and try and support the north. Here, at this point, during when Aegon takes the throne, we read that he focuses his attention on getting food and supplies up to the north, that people get grumpy about in the south because it's cold there too. So he immediately makes enemies. So, I mean, I hope that kind of answers your question. What do we know about this? About the Starks? No, they just go home and try and manage things competently. Naja Vanalbada, probably mispronounced that. I do apologise. Hearing the news today about the play getting done by the Shakespeare Company, what Shakespeare play is most reminiscent of A Song of Ice and Fire? Yes, so I will talk about this a little bit more in a moment. One of the other bits of news, in fact, probably the news I'm most excited about is the stage play. The Turning at Harrenhal stage play has been announced as happening, and it's going to happen this summer. It's going to start. The Royal Shakespeare Company are going to be adapting it, and it will start in Stratford upon Avon in the Midlands of England, which is where the Royal Shakespeare Theatre is. It's a theatre I know well. I'm very excited by this. I have to say, every single production I've ever seen there has been really well done. So, just on a technical level, this is fantastic. Obviously, the actors of the Royal Shakespeare Company are also excellent. So, um, I'm very happy about this. As for which Shakespeare play is most reminiscent of A Song of Ice and Fire, George R. R. Martin he loves Shakespeare. He loves the play, the histories most, and he loves the histories about the Wars of the Roses hugely. So, I mean, I think Richard III, just as a kind of a thematic thing, works really well for Game of Thrones. Macbeth, there are many kind of Macbeth references, it has to be said, if you link across to A Song of Ice and Fire. So if I were to pick one specific play, it would be Macbeth. If I were to pick a kind of an within Shakespeare, then it would be the histories, particularly about the Wars of the Roses. So, Milko Bar, what do you think about the Three-Eyed Crows? Is Bloodraven even the same person as Dunc thinks at this point, or is he just a tool for something more powerful? So, uh, at this point, Bloodraven is Bloodraven. He's Brynden Rivers, and we will meet him probably in a flashback in season 2, and in reality in season 3. And he is at this point one of the most powerful people in the Seven Kingdoms. When we move on from the Hedge Knight, where he's just a member of House Targaryen is massive at this point. When we move on from that to the Sworn Sword, that's the point at which he becomes Hand of the King. So, spoilers, but what happens after the very same year as the Hedge Knight, after that tourney, then 3 Targaryens die. The king dies, and then the 2 sons of Baelor Breakspear also die. So we've had the king and the next 3 in line all die within a matter of a few months. Aerys, the first, takes the throne and puts Bloodraven in as his Hand of the King. And that's the point at which Bloodraven becomes hugely powerful. And he will, for the next 25 years or so, he will be basically ruling the realm. Is he the same person? Yeah, he is the person who will become the Three-Eyed Crow. Once he is there as the Three-Eyed Crow, then he can be moving outside of time, as it were. But right now, this is him in person in the Seven Kingdoms. The Hedge Knight was written before George R. R. Martin had kind of expanded out his world, had really thought through Bloodraven as a character, which is why he doesn't really appear in this. Michael Trainer saying, did your opinion of who Sir Arlen was change while watching the show versus what's in the books? Was he any more or less knightly than you thought? I find this a really interesting question. So, in the books, Dunc is always thinking about Sir Arlen. And he's always thinking about what Sir Arlen used to say. And Sir Arlen always used to do this, and Sir Arlen this, and Sir Arlen that. And when you read it, kind of come to the conclusion that probably Dunc is looking through some kind of rose-tinted spectacles here. This was his father figure who died too young, and he's still a bit traumatized by this. This is the person who brought him up, who showed him what it was to be the thing that Dunc wanted to be. And so Dunc does kind of like hero worship him. In the books, as I say, you're kind of invited to think that probably he wasn't all that, but it's important to Dunc's character that he thinks he's all that. So what they did in the show was they gave us, through the flashbacks, a sight of who he actually was. Now, what is portrayed there is basically a drunkard and someone who wasn't that great a knight, but he understood his failings and tried his best to be a true knight. So they, I think, quite well showed the why Dunc could view him in that way. Because if you remember the last episode with the long flashback, Sir Arlen did save Dunc. And when he bursts out of that door, he's clearly very drunk. He saves Dunc's life. The first thing he says is, "In the name of the mother." That was the episode title. So they wanted us to notice this. "In the name of the mother." And the rest of the quote would be, "I charge you to protect the innocent." And that is Dunc's first impression of him, is somebody who comes out, bursts forth, and protects the innocent. Then we see him caring for his horses. He clearly, whatever else he is, he loves his horses. And we get a little bit of a backstory to him as well, that he lost his squire in the Battle of the Red Grass Field. He was a member of his family, and that's probably why he was getting drunk down in King's Landing. He probably felt quite guilty about that. And then we do see him giving out some coppers to the people, and he does clearly care about Dunc. So you can see why Dunc might have this idea of him, but it's more clearly drawn why that's not the whole picture. The bit that I'm uncertain about, and I won't know until we get to seasons 2 and 3, is the extent to which him going through, this happened in episode 2, was Dunc went through this realization that actually this man who had been a father figure to him, had given him everything, wasn't all that. No one could remember him. He was he was a drunkard. He was quite brutish. He did. It's a very noticeable thing in the books that Dunc often tells Egg he'll clout him around the ear for such and such a thing, but he never does it. So Arlen clearly did. He did clout Dunc around the ear. So he is quite physical. And what happened in episode 2 was that Dunc realizes this. And I actually thought it was a really good moment, was that he ends that. If you remember that episode 2 ended with him sort of say, "We'll see tomorrow what his legacy is, what he has wrought." The implication being the only legacy that Sir Arlen had was Dunc. And Dunc at the time was talking about, "I'm going to go into the tourney and I'm going to show them how good a knight I am. I'm going to show them how great I am. I'm going to win a few jousts. It's going to be great." But in reality, what happened was that he wasn't allowed to enter that day, but he showed that he was a true knight because he immediately jumped to the defense of Tansel, defending the innocent. as a true knight would. And that is what the legacy of Sir Arlen is that he comes out, he's a flawed character in many ways, but he bursts forth in that flashback in the name of the mother, protects the innocent, and then doesn't hang around and wait for people to say, oh, well done. He doesn't even wait to see whether the person he's saved is okay. He wanders off. But his heart was there remembering his vows, and that is the echo that is in Dunc. So the uncertainty I have is what this means for the later seasons, which is in the books, Dunc hasn't gone through that mental process as far as we can tell. He still kind of hero worships Sir Arlen in his head. He's always remembering what Sir Arlen used to say. That is not the case on the show now. On the show now, he's got a lot more of a clear understanding of who Sir Arlen actually was. Roman Lakovets, from a Doylist perspective, what narrative purpose do you think Dunc surviving Summerhall could serve? Good question. So, just for those who don't know this, we this is a sort of a literary shorthand when we're talking about the Doylist perspective. We're talking about Arthur Conan Doyle, the writer of Sherlock Holmes. And so when we're saying a Doylist perspective, we're talking about from the writer's perspective. What is the writer trying to do here? When we're talking about a Watsonian or Watson perspective, we're talking about in-world, what is being attempted here. So from a Doylist perspective, from the writer's perspective, what narrative purpose Dunc surviving Summerhall could serve? Two things. Thing number one is it shows Dunc's true character. Dunc's a pretty honest and open guy, so obviously we know what his true character is, but with Egg gone, who is he? What's he want? The two options that I most often hear is what would Dunc do afterwards if he survived are he'll go off, run off with the love of his life and just live out the last few years in happiness. Or two, he would be guilt-ridden and join the Night's Watch. That, I think, is the Doylist perspective, is to tell us who he is. Once you peel away even Egg, what is he? What is he just about the duty? Is he just about the love? Which is obviously a big thing in George R. R. Martin. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we haven't heard about it, but I think that if he goes to the second option, not the he runs off and has a relaxing retirement somewhere, if he chooses to go to the wall, then there must be something. Because this is Dunc. Something, he will be involved in something. Wherever Dunc goes, stuff happens. We may not get a story about it, but he will be important up there. So that is the sort of the Doylist second part to this, I think. Let's go to a question from Adam Geets saying, hi, Robert. When Marwyn the Mage says that the Maesters killed the dragons, what if he was referring to the Doom of Valyria and killing almost all of the Targaryen family at Summerhall? So, Marwyn the Mage in the books, Sam heads down to Old Town, meets Marwyn, an Archmaester, who he has a rather fun conversation with, it has to be said. And they're talking about Aemon, because Aemon Targaryen came down with Sam, sadly died on the way. And we get Marwyn saying, as a sort of an offhand comment, who do you think killed all the dragons the first time around? And Sam's like, what word? But the implication is that the Maesters, or Marwyn thinks that the Maesters killed the dragons the first time around. Now, what might that mean? Well, I have a theory about what happened in the Doom of Valyria. Just go and have a look at that video if you're interested. But I think the Maesters are a part of that. But I am even more convinced about the fact that the Maesters, after the Dance of the Dragons, the Maesters poisoned the dragon eggs to prevent there being more dragons being born. This was their one chance to get rid of the dragons, and they took it. So I think that's what that was referring to. Is it also referring to the House of the Dragon? Well, the way that's written, who killed all the dragons the last time around, is like they didn't kill all of the dragons. The Summerhall killed probably two Targaryens, being Egg and his son, Sir Duncan. But the other Targaryens survived, as far as we can tell. So I don't think this is there. I don't think that the Maesters did it at Summerhall. Maybe they did. We just don't have the information about it. This is one of those things that it has to be said. Out of everything in the world of Ice and Fire, the one thing that George R. R. Martin has been most obviously trying to hide is what happened at Summerhall. And when I say obviously, the description we have in the world of Ice and Fire is, and what happened there? Well, the Maester wrote a note, but he spilled ink all over it, so we've only got a couple of words left. That is pretty obvious. And then anyone who survived, they don't really want to talk about it. Again, pretty in your face. And then you get so Barristan, who, and he does this on a number of subjects, but he starts talking about Summerhall, and then Danny's like, "Oh, I'm a bit tired now. We'll talk about this some other time." It's obvious, pardon me, it's obvious that, to me at least, that George R. R. Martin doesn't want us to know about what happened at Summerhall until he reveals it. Let's go to Diego Godoy. Did you notice that in the show, when Aerion tells Dunc about his dream of a dead dragon, when this is Darren, sorry, tells Dunc about his dream of a dead dragon, he adds that it was in a big fire. This is different from the book. Could it be a retcon from George R. R. Martin to make this refer to Summerhall and Egg's death instead of Baelor at Ashford? Yeah, so this is Darren, who kind of pulls Dunc to one side before the trial, and he says, "Yeah, I've seen you in my dreams." And he explains a dream. He says, "I saw you. A dragon had fallen on you. It was dead, but you were alive, and it was a massive dragon." On the show, they had that scene, but they added an extra little bit that said, "and there was lots of fire." So is that something George R. R. Martin is just kind of trying to tweak? Possibly. We don't know the extent to which he was involved in specific lines in this. We know he was very involved in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and he did see all of the scripts, and he did have input into things, but we don't know specifics. So this is new, but with the fire reference, but it was in the graphic novels. If you look at the graphic novels of The Hedge Knight, or the graphic novel of The Hedge Knight, then you will see there's an image of this. There's a massive dragon, there's Dunc, and there's fire in the background. So this is new, but it's not completely new. Does it mean that this is about Summerhall, not what's happened at Ashford? I think it means it's about both. I think it opens up the possibility that this is um, a reference to Egg. If Egg dies in Dunc's arms, that would be horrendous and horrific, but the kind of thing that George R. R. Martin likes writing. So, and there will be fire going on there. So that's entirely possible. My general view, though, is that this is one of those things which it can be applied to more than one event. And it does reflect what happened at the tourney at Ashford Meadow, and it may also reflect what's going to happen at Summerhall. Niklas Kilvard, I've probably completely mispronounced that. I do apologise. Saying, "Hi, Robert. I am curious on your opinion on the Trial of the Seven episode. Um, I'm personally thinking it was good, but a bit disappointed on some of the elements they chose to remove, e.g., not using the war lances, which we've spoken about a moment ago, and the green apple sigil, and that Arion didn't try to cheat after yielding, and that he tried to make Dunc yield. I think it diminishes his character. This combined with the fact that they spent half the episode on Dunc's backstory. By the way, there's a battle that takes place just outside King's Landing at that point in time makes sense. Okay, so a few questions there. In terms of the battle in the flashback, there was a battle near to King's Landing, and young Dunc is there just trying to make a bit of money from whatever was left. This is the Battle of the Red Grass Field. This is the final battle of the first Blackfire Rebellion, although at the time they obviously didn't know it was just the first. It was the Blackfire Rebellion, a massive battle, and the Blackfires lost. We're told that that happened close to King's Landing. That's the only information we have. We're not told any more details. It was close to King's Landing. So, yeah, that makes sense. And it also makes sense if someone like Dunc was around and if the battle was visible from King's Landing, then yeah, there will be spoils of war. If you're happy to go there and just sort of take things from dead and dying bodies, then yeah, there's a good chance. So that all kind of adds up. That works. The green apple sigil. This was something that was in the novella. So we get Raymond Fossaway, and the story happens roughly the same. But he decides now he's a knight. He's got the house sigil, but he doesn't want to be mistaken for his cousin. So he paints the red apple green and goes into battle like that. And then later on, he kind of forms a separate house, basically. So they didn't include that. I think this was because they wanted this episode, as I said earlier, to focus in on Dunc and his backstory, and having lots of other characters there going, okay, now my moment is to do this and talk about this. That would have kind of deflected away from that. So I think that's why I think that Raymond Fossaway did well in that fight. As a character, um, they made him basically, and it wasn't quite like this in the story, but he basically said, right, make me a knight. Okay, now I just need a horse. He didn't put on proper armor. He was just wearing some rando leathers. But he went straight into the fight. And I think that was really cool. I think that worked really well. As a character that they've shown, that fits him perfectly. Also, you may remember there was a moment when Dunc was down and Arion was beating on him, and we thought Arion was about to win. And then a horse comes by and bangs Arion out of the way. That was Raymond. So Raymond Fossaway did really well in that fight. I think we will probably get a little bit of the green and red apple story in the next episode. that feels like the kind of thing they might use to wrap all of this up. But yeah, I understand and sympathise why they didn't include it. It made it slightly less book accurate, but it's one of those things that I'm not too concerned about. Michael Trainer saying George R. R. Martin likes echoes. Thank you. I think this is your third question. Thank you. So, Serwyn of the Mirror Shield saves a princess from giants and kills a dragon. If this guy will echo Dunc, please speculate on who his giant and dragon might be. Will he kill Egg? So save a princess from giants. If we're talking about Dunc, being like Serwyn of the Mirror Shield, um, he did save a woman from a. I mean, you could call Arian a giant, I guess. And killing a dragon. Will he kill Egg? I don't think so. One thing we don't know because the only bit of history that we have comes from the Maesters. We don't know all of the detail about what led Egg up to this point where he is trying to hatch dragons. We know some of it, and the Maesters were basically, oh yeah, he started to get obsessed with hatching dragons, and so he did all of these things, culminating in a fire. And the kind of implication is, well, he got what he deserved. He was trying to hatch dragons, messing with magic. It didn't work. So, um, in that context, I don't think Dunc is going to be killing Egg. I can't see that at all. I don't, at a slightly higher level, I don't see, although I understand where you're coming from, I don't personally see that Serwyn of the Mirror Shield works as an echo for Dunc. Yeah, so we get other the echoes with Dunc and Egg come with Brienne and Pod and things like that. Um, I'm not sure that we've got an echo that he is an echo of anybody earlier. Um, yeah, I would say no to that one. Akeem Wade, what are your thoughts on Varys being Daemon the Second? That would explain why he knows the black cells so well. Also, Bloodraven could be the sorcerer that cuts him and left him for dead. Bloodraven inadvertently thought him blood magic. So the idea that Varys is a secret Targaryen is quite well established within the fandom. He shaves his head. He clearly knows the secrets of the Red Keep. And the way that George R. R. Martin sets that up is that we get Cat thinking to herself, only the Targaryens understand all the secrets of the Red Keep. And then, ta-da, here's Varys. And also his head is smooth as an egg, which obviously gives the egg reference. So, yes, there are hints that you can take that he might be a Targaryen or a Blackfire or something like that. So he's not. So you asked if he was Damon the Second. I don't know whether he meant like Damon the Second Blackfire, as in John the Fiddler. No, he's too young to be him. But could he be a Blackfire descendant? He comes from Lys, which we know that Aerion was exiled to. And George R. R. Martin has said, yeah, he had some bastard children. So it's entirely possible that Varys is a descendant of Aerion or one of the Blackfires. And that is what helps explain how he might be so invested in getting someone who was probably a Blackfire onto the Iron Throne. Just the angel. If you search rejoice, etymology or origins, possess, own, spouse, and joy pop up. I think it ties to prophecy. Dunc is reborn in Rhaegar. He always slept under stars, and Rhaegar too at Summerhall, under the stars with a harp. So um, is Rhaegar Dunc reborn? Um, I mean, I don't think so. Um, uh, Partly because, and this isn't to say George R. Martin isn't going to do it, but he's not really leaned in here with people being reborn as somebody else. That's not a sort of a trope that he's been following at all. So I don't think we're looking for people to be reborn one as another. Is Rhaegar Dunc reborn? Are there echoes of Dunc? I would probably say no, because yes, Rhaegar did sometimes sleep under the stars, but Rhaegar was a singer with a harp. We don't really hear that about Dunc. He was very invested in prophecy. We don't really hear that about Dunc. Um, Dunc is a very simple soul, and is the point of his character, or part of the point of his character, is that he is not part of the nobility. He's one of the normals. He's one of the small folk. So to sort of reincarnate him in a way as Rhaegar, I have to admit, doesn't really work for me. Interesting idea, but I don't think that one works for me. Rasla, my question is, what do you think about the idea that Dunc may survive Summerhall? Could his survival tie into Lady Rohan's disappearance, with them running off to the Free Cities for a happily ever after? And Diego Godoy asking, also saying, "Hola, Robert. I'm sure you'll be all over it. Give me your thoughts um, on the idea that Dunc survives. Um, do you find it believable? Is Dunc cold hands?" And then Ranabir Mitra sort of further asking about cold hands. Um, so I have literally today just finished writing a video on is Dunc cold hands, which for many of you will be like, what is Dunc cold hands? Uh, this is an old, I would say, niche fan theory that Dunc is cold hands, and it sort of died, um, but then got resurrected just this last week with this revelation that Dunc survives Summerhall. Because once you get the idea that Dunc survives Summerhall, you have to then ask, so what did Dunc do? And the video that I've been doing starts out by saying, okay, well, let's say he survived. What's he going to do? I think the most likely thing is for him to join the Night's Watch. And I'm not going to spoil all. I always spoil the videos I've got coming out, but I'm not going to spoil all of it. But one thing I will say though is that next time you're reading those stories, check out the wall references because there's a lot. So Dunc, he thinks that maybe his father might be at the wall. He doesn't know who his father is. He just wonders whether he might be at the wall. And then he wonders whether, when he was a kid, somebody might have sent him to the wall. And the book two even ends with Egg saying, "I want to go to the wall," and Dunc saying, "Why?" And Egg says, "I've heard it's tall," making the link across to Dunc himself and the wall. And then we get to book three. You get John the Fiddler, Damon the Second Blackfire, who does get dragon dreams. He completely randomly just says, "Have you been to the wall?" to Duncan. And it's so random that even Dunc, who doesn't pick up on this stuff, even he's like thinking, "What? Why are you asking me that?" So there are a lot of references to the wall, added to which you get two characters at the wall, Gren and Small Paul, who there are hints that they might be Sir Duncan's descendants. They're both described as being thick as a castle wall, for example. So when you start adding all of this up, you go, okay, so there's a lot of kind of symbolism, imagery, language usage that suggests that Dunc is going to go to the wall. And it's not just like here's another place to go to. This is sort of meaningful in some way. So I buy into the idea that if this is true, and we're not 100% sure yet, but if this is true, if Dunc does survive, it kind of makes sense for me that he does go to the wall. And yes, we have to accept the fact that we've not been told this anywhere. But would we have been told if he died before any of the current main people at the wall were there, other than Maester Aemon? Then would they tell Jon? This is just another member of the Kingsguard being sent up to the wall. So I kind of buy that bit. I do not buy, it has to be said, the idea that Dunc is cold hands. Simply because, although I can make the logical chain all the way through, I can say, okay, so I can see why he might join the Night's Watch. I can see that he would be sorted into the Rangers, not the stewards or the builders. I can see that means that he would range north of the wall. I could see that he is getting quite old by this point, so he may actually lose a battle there. I can see Blood Ravens hooked up to the Weirwood network at that point. He might wish to intervene. So I get all of the possibilities. But when you look at the descriptions we have of Cold Hands, he's never described as tall. And that's the first thing anyone notices about Dunc, that he's tall. He's described as thin and gaunt, which is completely different to Dunc's physique. He's got black eyes, whereas Dunc has got brown eyes. He speaks a foreign language that Dunc doesn't. He seems to have abilities to talk to the crows that Dunc seems like the least magical person imaginable. So the more you go down this line, the more you have to say, okay, this kind of makes logical sense, but at the same time, that character does not seem like Dunc. He uses I did a little bit of research on this one for the video, but the language usage is completely different. Dunc uses very simple language. He's a very simple man, whereas Cold Hands uses complex words, quite poetic at times. It doesn't sound like Dunc, so it doesn't look like Dunc, doesn't feel like Dunc, and it doesn't sound like Dunc. So my general conclusion is it's not Dunc. You did ask about just to pick up on one other thing, the Lady Rohan Weber link. Might Dunc have just sort of run off with her? So we will meet her in season 2. She is in The Swan Sword, excellent character, and the attraction between the two of them is very clear, although for political reasons, she has to marry someone else. After that, a few years later, she then marries into the Lannisters. She becomes Lady Lannister, and has 4 wonderful Lannister children. After which we're told that she disappears in mysterious circumstances. This is a very George R. R. Martin thing to be saying in his in-world history. it's basically saying, I will tell you what happens here, but in a story, not here. So when did that happen? Well, we're told that that happened in the year 230 AC. Dunc, potentially surviving the tragedy at Summerhall, was in the year 259 AC. So this is about 3 decades later. The two don't therefore coincide. It's not that she disappeared in mysterious circumstances at the same time that Dunc disappeared in mysterious circumstances. She disappeared in mysterious circumstances. Then we get 30 years, and then Dunc disappears. So, uh, unless we're saying that he was married to her, with her, whatever, through all of that period, and then decided to head off afterwards, unless we're saying that, then no, this does not um, sort of make sense. Timing wise. Blue Boy, recently you've seemed a bit iffy on the future of the Traveller's Guide. These videos are truly some of the best of Song of Ice and Fire content ever created and would be a crime if you didn't re-release them. Well, thank you, that means a lot. A bit iffy, sorry if I've come across it as a bit iffy. They will resurface, do not worry. I am thinking about what makes me sound like a proper YouTuber. A premium content offer, which is like I've got Patreon. There are many benefits of being on Patreon, and I should pause now to say thank you, patrons. I can only do this because of your support. Thank you very much. I offer a lot of things to people on Patreon. One of which is the priority questions here. So I try and frame my live streams around questions from my patrons. I was wondering about updating and redoing the Traveller's Guide as a sort of a patron offer, but not just on Patreon, because there's lots of places, because I'm now putting these videos out all over the place. They're on YouTube, they're on Spotify, they're on wherever. And a lot of those places have got like a subscription kind of thing going on. I haven't figured all this out yet, but it makes sense to me is if we try and get the offer the same on all of those places. So if you're supporting me and the channel, thank you. I hugely appreciate it. But although as it stands, Patreon is by far the best way to be supporting the channel. If for whatever reason you want to do it somewhere else, then okay, and you will get the same benefits you get being somewhere else. So I haven't figured all of that out. Realistically, I know what I'm like. This will take some time. So the Traveller's Guide is coming back, is what I'm saying, but probably not in exactly the same format it was before. We've got more since I did it. And for those who do not know what the Traveller's Guide is, this is a series of videos I did a long time ago, attempting to show Westeros, Essos, as if you're traveling through it. So not just a description of a history of this place, but here. But what does it smell like? What does it feel like? Is this a nice place to be? Is this not a fun place to be? So I sort of kind of did it in this kind of first person perspective idea. The They didn't get massive views, but the people who liked it did seem to really like it, and I hugely appreciate that. I did take them down, and have said many times they are coming back up. So do not worry, they will return. I just haven't figured out the format yet. Let's go to Wrestler saying, good day, Robert. I hope you and Dan the dog are well. We are, thank you. I have to say this episode was phenomenal. And the combination of shots and sound, I think this made one of, if not the best medieval fight put to screen. The show has killed it, and I'm so happy it's getting the love. I absolutely agree with that. On another note, however, did you see we finally have a time frame and title for the Mad King play? Mitra saying, salutations, Robert and Dan the dog. I hope you're well. I hope you're excited about the recent updates regarding the Mad King play. Looks like West Midlands Railways trains to Stratford-upon-Avon will be busy this summer. And Lady Pushkin's saying, hi, Robert, will you be visiting Stratford this year? So this is some very exciting news. I think it's very exciting. The Mad King, we talked about this a little bit earlier. The stage play that George R. R. Martin has been working on with not just him, he's sort of in collaboration. We finally have a venue and a release date for it. Now, the stage play is about the tourney at Harrenhal. Now, it's got a name. It's Game of Thrones, The Mad King, and that's the third different name that we've got. It was the Iron Throne was the idea that the name that they were throwing around a year or so ago, but now we seem to have settled on the Mad King. So this is set at the tourney at Harrenhal. Now, I am very excited about this, probably more than any of the other adaptations, because this is where we finally will find out so much information. What happened with Rhaegar and Lyanna? Who is the Knight of the Laughing Tree? What about Howland and Ashara? What was Rhaegar's plan? Was he actually plotting a coup? Why was there that year of the false spring? What was going on there? The questions are almost endless, and we will get answers to probably many of them, if not all of them. Now, this has been sort of, well, George R. R. Martin has talked about this for a little while, and it was about a year ago when we were told that, it's basically written and they're just trying to find a home for it. We now have a home and we seem to have a plan. And this is going to be happening this summer. And it's going to happen at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre in Stratford-upon-Avon. This is Shakespeare's birthplace, and it's going to be done by the Royal Shakespeare Company. Now, the Royal Shakespeare Company, for those who do not know, is exactly what you think it is. This is like the official Shakespeare Company. They have excellent actors. The Royal Shakespeare Theatre is in Stratford-upon-Avon, which is a delightful little town in the Midlands of England, sort of halfway between Birmingham and Oxford. And it's a theatre I know well. I've been there several times, and it's always excellent quality. So this is a fantastic choice. And George R. R. Martin was there when he did his wanderings for the year. Most years he sort of goes off on a sort of a bit of travel to various places, and he did stop in at Stratford-upon-Avon, and this is what that was about. So this will happen this summer. We don't know the exact dates yet, but I am very excited. People asking, am I going to go? Oh yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to go at least twice if I possibly can. It's something I'm really looking forward to. So, for those who are sort of less into the theatre world, as my best guess, we've not been told the sort of the rollout of this, but how these things probably work out is that being here in Stratford at the Royal Shakespeare Theatre will be for a season. Now, how long that is, I don't know, 3 months or so, something like that. It will run through the summer. After that, it will transfer probably to London, to the West End. They will find a theatre. They're probably already looking for this, that they can take the production as a whole. So the Royal Shakespeare Company is going to continue to be doing this, but they will take a theatre and take the direction, probably many of the same actors, and just take it to London. Now, what you will find in the West End is the same, I think, in Broadway, is that there are some plays that have been in the same theatre for not just years, but even decades. and so they just take over the theatre for that production. Now, that I think is so. Step one, Stratford, 2-3 months, whatever. That's where it's debuting. That's where the publicity bit will be. Then it'll go to London, and then, from what George R. Martin has said before, he wants it to go to. I mean, he named Australia and New York Broadway, so that will be the next step. So, if you can't make it to Stratford upon Avon, I completely understand. But I think the next step will be London, and then after that, the wider world. It would not surprise me if alongside this they release the script, something along those lines, as a book. It feels like an automatic money spinner. So I think that's where they're going to be going with this. I'm very excited. There will be so much going on this. Go and have a look at George R. Martin's Not a Blog. He's excited as well. In fact, that's the word he uses for his current mood. Excited. This should be great. He talks about staging a tourney there, and so I'm expecting not just the big feast and everyone sat there and chatting and talking, but I'm expecting there to be some kind of dramatic representation of a tourney on a stage. It should be amazing. So yeah, I'm very excited. I will definitely be trying to get there as early as I possibly can. Actually, let's have a quick flip through the chat. See what's going. Rambling, hello there. Saying I'd be more likely to bet limited engagement on the West End than long-term adaptation. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, and then saying it might, if the opening does well, then it might sort of go. But I think this is it's almost certain to sell out through the run in Stratford. Whenever I've been there, they've pretty much sold out every performance. So people just go there because it's a great place to go and watch theatre. Flick through. Could you imagine them doing a Mad King series? Yeah, that would be quite something. And yeah, so I think this is. Carl Kosnak saying Robert needs an official media tsar to manage his ever-growing empire. I do. I need a media tsar. I didn't realize it until now, but thank you. Yes. Let's go to a question from one of my patrons. Per Marcus Rissman saying 7 blessings from a chilly north. This is more of an observation regarding your theory about why Egg sent Bloodraven and Aemon to the wall. In the books, even more so in the show, Egg's hatred of the Blackfires is highlighted. Egg's funny song in the show is one example. It seems like the showrunners and George R. R. Martin really want us to know that Egg doesn't like them. It's curious, then, that Egg punished Bloodraven for his actions against the Blackfires at the Great Council of 233. Do you think this is because George R. R. Martin wants to hint that something more is going on, or should we just chalk it up to Egg's character progression into an honourable king? Also, on the topic of Egg and the Long Night, why would Egg try to reform the Seven Kingdoms and get on the wrong side of the nobility if he expected the Long Night to happen again? Okay, so just in terms of why was Egg pushing through reforms if he thought that the end of the world was nigh? So he came to power in the middle of a long winter, and there's every reason to think that the more prophetically minded Targaryens started to get a little bit jittery at that point. However, Egg's reign was, I think, 26 years long. So the winter ended, and after that, it was like, okay, well, now I need to rule. And that's the point at which he's pushing through all of these reforms. So it's not that he was trying to push through reforms, annoying all of the nobles, thinking that the long night is about to happen. There was a very long winter, which probably made some people wonder that. And then that finished, and then Egg started his reforms. So, in terms of Egg hating the Blackfire, so the Blackfire stuff has been seeded into season one. I have actually been very impressed at the way they've done this, because when George R. R. Martin wrote The Hedge Knight, he'd not really worked through this idea about the Blackfire rebellions, so they don't get mentioned. But then you get to book 2, The Swan Sword, and it's an important plot point. Then you get to 3, The Mystery Knight, and it's the central point. So they really had to seed this idea about the Blackfires in the show, because in season 2, it's suddenly going to become important. So how they've done that is by having Egg singing a song about the Blackfires, about him sort of play fighting, and have at that, die Blackfire scum, that kind of stuff, showing the Battle of the Red Grass Field. So even the casual viewer will be thinking, oh, okay, so there was some kind of rebellion, something to do with the Blackfires that was just a few years in the past. And that, I think, is what they were trying to inject into this, is just to let the casual, because we know all about the Blackfire rebellions, the casual viewer doesn't have the foggiest idea. It's not important for this plot, but it will become important. And just seeding this as a bit of world building, that there was a rebellion, there was a big battle, and the Blackfires lost, that I think was something that was done really well. The fact that Egg hates them, they did play up, it has to be said. One of the things which the show hasn't sort of drawn out, and I mean the books haven't really drawn out, but seems quite clear, is that Aegon and Aemon were named by the king. Aemon, his older brother, which is a little bit of a weird thing. So no, not the mother, not the father, but named by the king. Why? Well, probably to kind of reclaim those names from the Blackfires, because the 2 oldest sons of Daemon Blackfire, the Pretender, were Aegon and Aemon. And so they didn't want that to be, now Blackfires have got a hold of that. This is the king saying, no, the Targaryens own those names. Those are our names. So right from the very beginning, Egg was set up, his very name was chosen in opposition to the Blackfires. So yes, his hatred of the Blackfires is a clear and important plot point. How this plays across to Bloodraven, for those who've missed this bit of the history, is that when Egg was chosen to be king, he's Aegon the Unlikely. He shouldn't. He was the 4th son of a 4th son. There were many, many people in line to the throne before him. No one had expected him to get it. But when his father died, because all of these other heirs had all died, they had a great council to try and figure out, okay, who should rule now then? And at that, then the latest Blackfire pretender said, I want to put my claim. And Bloodraven, who was hand of the king at the time, said, okay, in the king's name, I give you safe passage. You can come across and you can try and make your case. But the moment he arrived, then Bloodraven captured him and killed him. When Egg became king, his first act, we're told, was to imprison Bloodraven for that, because the hand of the king is speaking on behalf of the king, and if people thought that the hand of the king was just he didn't respect the king's name by saying, "In the name of the king, I guarantee your freedom and safety," and then just killed someone. That undermined Egg right from the very beginning. So the reason why he might have done that kind of makes sense. But there are several things that make you go, maybe there was another layer to this. Maybe there was something else going on there. Because Bloodraven was allowed to keep Dark Sister, which at the time was the only Valyrian steel sword that House Targaryen had. But he really was imprisoned in shame. Why on earth would they let him take the greatest treasure of House Targaryen away with him? That doesn't quite make sense. And if you do really think that this manipulative, lying, murderous person is heading up to the wall, are you really going to send with him several, or not several, up to 200 of his allies, knowing that he will then be able to establish himself a power base there? That also doesn't kind of make sense. So a lot of this smells a little bit suspicious. Um, my you kindly called it my theory. I mean, I don't think it's a theory. I think it's sort of me sort of thinking out loud. Is that none of this kind of works unless you're thinking that, okay, Aemon, who said the reason why he went to the wall because he thought that was his place, and Bloodraven, who was getting on by this point, and probably thought, you know what, that the real battle is going to be happening to the north. If they wanted to go to the north, if they wanted to go to the wall, that makes a whole lot more sense to me. So Egg sending them up was not punishment to Bloodraven, but actually just this was what Bloodraven was doing, and we'll try and get some political capital out of it while we're about it. He sent him up with, Aemon says about, this was with never before, since 6 kings had been sent there in golden fetters, never before had there been so much fanfare about people going to the wall. That doesn't sound like people being sent there in disgrace in any way. Catherine Furseth saying, "Hi, Robert. We all speculate which stories of Dunc and Egg we would get if George R. R. Martin gets around to writing them. Regarding your recent videos on Maester Aemon, I wonder what stories you would expect from around the Great Council, where Egg becomes king, and how much of this story would focus on Aemon and his choices. If the prophecy is known to one or both men, this adds a new layer to the story." So this is kind of like building on this as an idea. So as a story, a Dunc and Egg story, this will probably be from Dunk's perspective, meaning that we might miss some of the subtlety and nuance about what's really going on under the radar here. Now, the fact is, when the Great Council happened, they had quite a limited set of possibilities. If they decided they didn't want a woman to inherit, which they almost certainly did, then they've got Aerian's son Maegor, who was just 1 year old, or Maester Aemon, who was a maester, and so had taken a vow not to take the throne or take any kind of personal power, or Egg. So really, the powers that be, we call it a Great Council, they didn't really have much option. They decided quite quickly they didn't want Maegor as king, partly because he was just a child. So actually, you've got 1.5 decades of other people ruling the Seven Kingdoms as regent, and partly because this was Aerian's son, named after Maegor the Cruel. Doesn't sound like the kind of king we want. So that's the first option, which they pretty clearly and quickly decided not to go down. The second option was Maester Aemon, and they actually offered it to him, and he said no, which left them with Egg. So he was made king, not through all of the lords just like assessing all of these different options and deciding, okay, he's probably the best bet. He was the only chance they'd got, the only other Targaryen there that they could possibly give it to. So the idea of a great council, I think, puts the wrong idea into our heads here. So, friend, happy Thursday, Robert, and to you too. Firstly, I loved the Maester Aemon video this week. The theory that there was more to him during the Night's Watch was brilliant, and I'm immediately on board. I'm very happy to hear that. Related to that, what do you think the significance of Egg sending Dunc as an escort to the wall might be? It seems a bit excessive at face value. Do you think Bloodraven's final exchange with Dunc will prove to be something particularly prophetic or intriguing? Best wishes, warmest regards, and to you. So, when Aemon and Bloodraven went to the wall, they went with 200 other prisoners, most of whom, or at least a significant number of which, were Bloodraven's loyal guard, basically. And Egg sent them up on a boat to Eastwatch, and he sent Dunc with them. Now, this does feel like a weird thing to do, because Dunc is his closest friend and ally. He's Egg has literally only just taken the throne, and he will have realized that he's got no allies. He sent his brother. His brother has taken himself up to the wall. Bloodraven, who he may well not get on with, but he's a very, very experienced hand with the king. He's sent to the wall, and now he's sending his best friend and protector, Dunc, up to the wall as well on like a month's round trip or so. So it feels a little bit off that he does. Does make you wonder whether there's another layer to what's going on. Might Bloodraven say something to Dunc? Perhaps. That's entirely possible. It's the kind of thing that we're only going to find out when we actually read a book about that. Craig, how do you anticipate the Lady Spider, this is Rohan Weber, will be portrayed in season 2? On each reread of The Swan Sword, I go back and forth on how much she is actually manipulating the situation to free herself from the Long Inch. She is both sympathetic, but certainly not blameless. There is a femme fatale element to her character, more akin to film noir. Yeah, so as a character, she's a fantastic character. I'm really looking forward to seeing her in season 2 of A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. The actress whose name I forget, but I have seen her in other things, looks like another perfect bit of casting. Now, is she manipulating things? My reading is that yes. So the situation in that story is that she's the lady of Coldmoat. She has to she's in charge there, but her husband, who was the Lord, has died. And his will basically says that she has to remarry within a certain period of time, or she will lose out. And she's only got a few weeks left to go. The household knight, Sir Lucas Longinch, he wants to marry her, and he basically says to her, look, I'm your only option. If you want to remain the lady here, then you've got to marry me. She doesn't seem keen. So she seems clever. She seems capable and competent. And the things which happen are her pushing to make things happen. So is she manipulating events? And when we say manipulating events, two things need to happen. Dunc needs to take out Loginch, and then she needs to find somebody to marry. Um, so everything in that story, you could say, is pushing towards that endpoint. Can she control all of the different variables there? Well, clearly no. But she is clearly, I think, manipulating things to try and get the outcome that she wants. James Horner saying, "Hello, Robert. I'm really enjoying this adaptation. The casting has been perfect, even the smaller roles such as Plumber, who is such a small role in the book, but the actor really gave him a distinctive character. I have only one tiny gripe, and that is that they didn't include Baelor's tactic with the tourney lances. I know it's a small detail, but it comes up again in the Mystery Night. Yeah, I think if you'll forgive me, I think I've already spoken on that one, so let's leave that be." As GH saying, was Baelor about to take Dunc into his service, maybe even setting him aside as a future Kingsguard? Also, does Dunc Baelor echo Brienne Renly? Um, well, was he about to take him into his service? It's left open. He certainly says the realm has need of good men. The implication being the realm has need of him. Um, so perhaps that's where they were going. Is there a Dunc Baelor echo with Brienne and Renly? Yes. And part of the echo is obviously the family thing, which is that Brienne is a descendant of Dunc, and then uh, Renly, the Baratheons, do branch out from the Targaryens. So yes, there is an echo going on there, but we never really got to see it play out. Um, the the echo obviously is that Brienne tried and failed to protect Renly, and Baelor tried and failed to protect Dunc. So it's kind of almost like a switching around of these roles. Reflective Rambling giving out IGG Live membership. Thank you very much. And while you're there, let me just thank my moderators. If you are here live in the chat, the reason why the chat is such a fun, uplifting place to be is because the moderators make it that way. They are absolutely fantastic, and I would hugely appreciate it if you could just show them a little bit of love. I send you my love as well, moderators. But yeah, if you could give them a bit of love, I would much appreciate that. In terms of giving out free memberships, this is the thing you can do. If you're a member of the channel, you can, for a certain amount of time, I don't know exactly how long, then you can give out free memberships. It's very kind, so thank you very much. If you do want to support the channel, the best way is through Patreon. But if for whatever reason you don't want to go to Patreon, then you can be a member of the channel here. And I appreciate that hugely too. Close Ballerina. In episode 1, when Dunc meets Egg, there are a suspiciously large number of crows hanging around in the background. Do you think they were hinting that Bloodraven was watching or even engineering this meeting? I think yes. Um, so there have been a few things that make you go, "Oh, is this Bloodraven? Is something going on here?" The Woods Witch or the seer or whatever she was, if you noticed, there was some kind of like a blemish on the skin. Perhaps that would, if you'd looked at it, looked a bit like a raven-shaped spill of wine on her. Um, So yeah, I think there are hints that Bloodraven was taking an interest. Did he set it up? I don't think so. Just in the books, the implication we get when we do get to meet Bloodraven in the Mystery Knight, then he seems a little bit confused about what's going on, just trying to figure out what's going on. Not, yes, I'm master manipulating you guys to be doing whatever. So I don't think that's what was there. I think, yes, they're giving hints for those who want to see it that Bloodraven is keeping an eye on this, but that's about it. Great Khan saying, Hola, or Hola, Robert, you're looking sharp today. Well, thank you very much. I had a haircut earlier. Today is my final day in Vietnam. It's been incredible and I'll miss it greatly. Besides which, I got to listen to a swathe of your old streams as I rode across the country. So it feels as if you've been a part of the trip the whole time. Thank you for all your insights as well as patience over the years and giving every question a meaningful answer. Well, thank you very much. That actually means a lot. Thank you. I feel very happy. Vietnam's somewhere I've never been, but everything I've seen it looks like an incredibly beautiful country. So, yeah, thank you for letting me know that I've sort of been there in spirit. Um, but as for um, uh, what else was it you were saying? Final day in Vietnam. Yeah. So I hope you're enjoying your last day, and I hope you have a safe trip back, flight back. Curse Ballerina, picking up a question for Two Rivers. I love it when people do this, pick up questions for others. The chat goes through so quickly that I can't pick up all of the questions that come through, but obviously highlighting them with super chats means that they do get answered. So thank you. That's very kind. Any chance that Dunc being richer than a Lannister refers to Dunc's section in the White Book, the Kingsguard history record being longer, richer than Jaime's? Love to the moderators. Yes, I mean, this is one of the things that I've heard as possibly. I think we're right in thinking this isn't just you're going to have a lot of money. That seems to be too simple an interpretation. So for him to be richer in some way implies he's got something that Lannisters want. Now, might it be about how big an entry in the White Book he's got compared to Jaime's? It could, but Jaime doesn't seem that bothered by it. It's not a big thing that he's going, oh. He does think a bit about the White Book, but it's not. Oh, so yeah, so Duncan, he's got so much going on in there, and him being so jealous. So that's not really where I think the riches are. If I had to guess right now, I would say that this is hinting at Rohan Weber. Now, I mentioned her earlier. Dunc will encounter her in season 2. He does in book 2. And they have a connection, undoubtedly. But it's the wrong time. It doesn't quite work. The situation doesn't allow them to be together. So he heads off. He does think about her again in the next story. So it's not like she was just like a brief moment. He does think back to this. Now, the bit of history we know is that she then later marries Lord Lannister before disappearing in mysterious circumstances. Now, as I say, this is a classic George R. R. Martin way of saying, I'll tell you about this another time. And because this is a character from the Dunc and Egg stories, the most likely, by a long, long way, the most likely thing is that this is something to do with Dunc and Egg, and almost certainly something to do with Dunc, given their history. Is it possible that she elopes with Dunc and disappearing in mysterious circumstances because he's quite famous at this point? She's quite important and famous. She has to disappear. They can't just like officially say, "Oh, that's it, we're now together," not them. So if she elopes with Dunc, Dunc has Lady Lannister, and Lord Lannister is bereft. We're told that he's I've forgotten just briefly, I've forgotten his first name, but we're told that he was madly in love with her, and he's bereft without her. And then Dunc has her, and that, I think, makes him richer than a Lannister, because it's quite important to say it's not just like richer than Lannisters or richer than House Lannister. It is a Lannister he is richer than, and I think it's about getting the love of Rahan Weber. Reflective Rambling asking the same question. Thank you very much. Actually, you're picking up the same question from Two Rivers. Thank you, both of you, for that. Let's go to Lord of Dragon saying, "Good evening, Robert, and happy Thursday, and to you too. What do you think it is that draws Dunc and Egg together, apart from circumstance? I mean, they seem to have an immediate compatibility." They do. They do. I think there's a lot of things. There is definitely he is in need of a squire. Egg desperately wants to be a squire. So there's that throwing them together there. There's, I think, a deeper level here, though, which is that they are alike in unexpected ways. They're both good people fundamentally, and also we get the line that Maester Aemon says when he's talking about Egg. He's looking back and thinking about Egg, and he says that Egg had an innocence to him, a sweetness that we all loved, which sounds like Dunc. They are both quite innocent. They're in their different ways. They're quite sweet, innocent people, and so I think they share that, and they're also complementary in a way. Is that obviously Dunc's big and Egg is small, but also Dunc doesn't really understand how to fit into certain social situations, and Egg does, and he can help him out with that. Egg doesn't really understand the wider world. Dunc does, and can show him that. So they're complementary in what they're about, and this link, I think, is for me shown best in the Hedge Knight, when Dunc, if you accept the fact that Dunc was not truly knighted, and so he's been living a lie all the way through this, when he discovers that Egg actually is not a little kid who just happens to be there at this inn, he's actually a Targaryen prince. He thinks to himself, actually, I thought we were alike, but perhaps we're alike in a different way than I thought. Because he knows what it's like to want something so much that you tell a huge lie to get it. He told a huge lie that he was a knight. Egg told a huge lie that he wasn't a prince. And that is the link between the two of them, is that they are the same character in a way. They want to do the same thing. It's very noticeable that the two of them, although they do push and pull in different directions, instinctively they stay together because they're wanting to do the same things. They're wanting, maybe this is a thing which Egg is better at, or maybe this is a thing that Dunc is better at, but they're staying together because their characters are so tightly drawn together. AD Ross. Oh, this is my last question about Dunc and Egg. So this is a good time to drop any more Dunc and Egg related questions into the chat. I will try and answer as many of them as I can. A.D. Ross saying, "Greetings, Sir Robert. I've just finished reading The Mystery Knight for the first time, and I really enjoyed the foreshadowing of Dunc becoming Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. It's got me wondering, do we have much information on how Dunc's appointment to the Kingsguard was taken? I'm aware that there was Criston Cole during the reign of Viserys I, but if I'm not mistaken, wasn't he from a minor noble family?" Yes, so how was Dunc, as a hedge knight, becoming a part of the Kingsguard? How was that received? We're not told. But I think there are a couple of points here to note, which is, firstly, he's not the first hedge knight to become a member of the Kingsguard. We've got a couple already there. We've got Sir Humphrey the Mummer, who was there under Aegon I. Also Sir Samgood Sourhill, who was there under Jaehaerys. So they were both hedge knights who got elevated into the Kingsguard. So it's not like he was the first. And the second point is that people thought that the king could choose who they wanted for their Kingsguard. So you get the Hound, who is made a part of the Kingsguard. Technically, he's not even a knight, so he shouldn't be allowed there, but the king gets to decide. Or we've got Sandok the Shadow, who's there for Aegon the Third, who nobody really knew anything about, but clearly Aegon trusted him. So that's the second part of the equation, is that people kind of accept that if the king desperately wants one person in, they can do that. Yes, this is seen as like this pinnacle of knighthood, and the greatest in the land might have a chance, but they also understand that this is not just entering the Hall of Fame. Actually, it's a job, and so the job is to protect the king, and so the king gets to decide who is in there. So I think that the kind of the short answer to all of that is that he probably wasn't. I mean, people might have not have loved the idea of him being a part of the Kingsguard, but probably he wasn't really opposed. People would go, okay, well, we've had hedge knights before, and the king gets to decide, and everyone knows that they're close, and it's like, this is the most obvious pick for a member of the Kingsguard that you could possibly imagine. So yeah, I don't personally think that would have been too much of an issue. I have got one Lord of the Rings question now from Jason Frank saying, "Hi Robert, I was late posting last week, so I have an off-topic one. I'm reading Lord of the Rings again after about 20 years and had a question about when the Fellowship is in Lothlorien. There's a few mentions of how their time there seems to slip by. It is written that they remained some days in Lothlorien, so far as they could tell or remember, and when leaving, it became like a home to them, though they could not count the days and nights that had passed. Do you think there's any magic or power that contributed to this, or is it simply that they were finally able to feel safe and relaxed after the first leg of their journey?" Well, I think the thing that you say there is definitely the case. Yes, they could relax. They knew they were safe after all the stuff that they'd been through, the loss of Gandalf, etc., etc. This was a safe place. So it kind of makes sense that they sort of lost track of time. But there is a deeper thing, as you would expect with Tolkien, there's a deeper thing going on here, which is, and he kind of explains this actually in one of his letters, that the Smiths of Eregion and the Noldor more broadly, but thinking specifically of them, they knew deep inside that they should be in Valinor. That was the place that suited them and their rhythm of life, not Middle Earth. Middle Earth is it's transitory. there's this constant cycle of birth, death, rebirth, etc. If you're an elf, an immortal elf, then the humans are born, they grow up, they get old, they die, then their children born, and it's endless cycle. Um, Even the trees you can see growing up over time, and that you get this annual cycle of the leaves on the trees, and the trees themselves bursting forth, um, staying bright and brilliant, and then dying and going away, and it's just like this endless cycle of birth, death, rebirth. That doesn't fit the elves at a deep level because they require stability and longevity. So this was part of how Sauron managed to persuade Celebrimbor to be forging rings of power, because they wanted to stay in Middle-earth, but they also wanted a little bit of Valinor. And what was promised was something which would be kind of holding back the tides of time and keeping where they are to be safe against that. Now, the three elven rings, the three rings that Celebrimbor forged without Sauron's oversight, they were used by Galadriel and by Elrond. I could talk about the Gandalf one another time, but they used them to make the places they were safe against the ravages of time. So it didn't feel like within those areas, Rivendell, Lothlorien, it didn't feel like you were going through this endless cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. It felt like in those areas that things just were, and they stayed, and they were permanent. And so that was part of what was going on there. So Galadriel, with the power of her ring, did many things, protected it against Sauron's gaze, etc., but also created this space that was almost like a small taste of Valinor there in Middle-earth. And so that is why it felt to the Fellowship as if the days drifted by and they didn't really know how long they'd been there, because this is them experiencing a little bit of Valinor. So that's what was going on there. So say it's the Tolkien working at a slightly deeper level than. Yes, it's true. They did rest and relax for the first time for a very long time, but there's another level there. This is an active state of being for Lothlorien. First, Ballerina, do you think the way Dunc had fainted, blood loss, eyes open, alluded to the fact that he had died and the gods intervened? Was the second get up a resurrection by the seven? I've heard this. I don't know whether somebody's come up with some kind of theory somewhere, that he was resurrected by the seven. They certainly don't play this up on the TV show. So, and this is a TV show thing, not a book thing. There obviously was the battle, but the whole get up thing wasn't wasn't pronounced in the stories. One thing I have seen is this idea that Dunc meets the representatives of the seven in the build-up to the trial, by which we mean that he meets the crone, who's the seer woman. He meets the smith, who's Steely Pate, etc., etc. And so he's meeting the kind of the earthly representatives of the seven, because the trial of seven is a Faith of the Seven moment. And the idea is that the Faith of the Seven will show, well, the gods will show who is in the right by them being victorious in the trial. And so it makes sense if Dunc, being innocent, is protected by the seven, is brought back by the seven. So it kind of makes sense. I don't think that that was where the showrunners were going with this. I don't think we had one Septon there doing the kind of the benediction thing first, but other than that, they haven't played into the faith of the Seven at all. So I don't think that's what was going on here. I think it makes a lot of sense and it's quite fun as a theory, but I don't think it's what they were aiming for in the TV show. Okay, let's have a quick flick through the chat. Aaron's son saying, or asking, what are your thoughts on the portrayal of Baelor Breakspear, the king who never was, and the legacy that might have been? Yeah, so it's one of the wonderful things about when a new TV show, Game of Thrones TV show, comes out is that we suddenly get these quotes from George R. R. Martin resurfacing after many years. And he was asked, are there any moments that were really important in Targaryen history which kind of changed things? And he mentions that moment. He says, Baelor Breakspear dying at at Ashford was significant, because if he had inherited and been king, he was good and he was wise, and perhaps he could have kept the Targaryens there in power for longer. So, yes, it's it's a significant moment. I think the other thing I would say is that if you get the chance, do take a look at Bertie Carvel, who's the actor who plays Baelor, and his interviews when talking about the character. I can't off the top of my head think of many actors who I look at what they're saying about the character and go, yeah, you got it. You understood it. You didn't just understand that character, but you understood what the point of the story is and how this all fits together and how your character fits within that story. He clearly thought deeply about this, and then was able to answer very eloquently when he was asked about it. So I think the portrayal was good, very, very good. I think that um, he comes across as being both sort of firm and strong, but also caring, and that's quite a hard balance to strike. So yeah, I thought it was very good. Mark Shear saying, I also really like the interviews with the actor of Baelor. Yeah, absolutely. Buttoned Up Reader saying Breakspear was amazing, just as good as Viserys in season 1 of House of the Dragon. Such presence on screen. I thought, yeah, absolutely, and I think they did it really well. Um, uh, I wasn't sure if I was going to like the introduction of the Game of Thrones theme when he sort of like comes in and says, "I will stand with Sir Duncan." It's like, but that worked so well. That was such an epic end to episode 4, when he sort of comes in and you get the rousing music there. So yeah, I thought that worked very, very well. Andrew Case saying, speaking of Shakespeare, earlier in the stream, Dunc and Egg always gave me Henry IV play vibes, the making of a king, the influences around him, etc. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, Henry IV. There were 3 parts, I think, to Henry IV, and this it kind of builds up this idea of like, who are the people who we've got Falstaff in there, as well as these kind of political movers. Who are the people that kind of shape this king in waiting? So yeah, that's definitely a part of it. Um, Tommy of Then saying, actually, they did play into the faith a few times with Baelor. Yeah, I guess. Ray Blackfire saying Bloodraven and Aemon have somehow survived to 100 plus, perhaps because of the magic on or beyond the wall. How plausible do you think it is that Dunc is alive somewhere on near or beyond the wall, aged 100 plus? So when he went, so at the time of the tragedy at Summerhall, he was probably, we don't know exactly when he was born, but he's probably in his late 60s by this point. So heading up to the wall, then he will have been thinking this is just to see out his days at the wall. The wall does preserve, and Aemon, as you say, gets to about 100. Pardon me, gets to about 100. Bloodraven surviving longer than that is because he's hooked up to the Weirwood network. That's keeping him sort of artificially alive. Could Dunc have survived? Not. I mean, this would put him in his 120s, 130s, something like that by the time of A Song of Ice and Fire. So no, as a sort of a natural human, no. The only reason he would still be around is if some kind of magic happened to him. He is not intrinsically himself naturally magical, but perhaps something magic happened to him. Buttoned Up Reader saying, do you think the next episode will explore the royal family's fears of using the small folk support, given their reaction at the end of the trial? I don't know. I hope so. This is one of the things I thought that they've done really well, is they've really played up this small folk versus the privileged few. That is a big theme all through the Dunc and Egg stories and through what we think will happen later on in the Dunc and Egg stories. The trial of 7 was set up as who are the people who are at home and relaxed among the small folk. We've got Dunc, obviously. Lionel Baratheon, happily singing and dancing. He doesn't care who is there. He's doing tugs of war, etc. He doesn't, he's one of the most powerful lords in the land, and he's happily mixing with the small folk. Raymond Fossaway, similarly, seems to be happy with the small folk. Robin Reisling, who sort of is wandering around, and we don't get to see him much beyond his couple of scenes, but that I think the clear implication is that he's wandering around talking to Egg just because he happens to be talking to a rando person. He's not there going to try and find his way up to the High Lord's table straight away. So and Baedor, obviously, people who fit with the small folk against the people who clearly don't. When we've got Arian, we've got the King's Guard, we've got Stefan Fossaway. These are the people who, they are the elites who are playing the elites game. And that, I think, they played up really well so that we can see that that's a confrontation that is going to be carrying on through this story, the further on into it we go. So I think they worked that one really well. And will episode 6 cover the royal family's fear of losing the small folks' support? I don't know. I would hope that. Oh, Joe Magician's in the chat. Joe Magician has seen the episode, so maybe he will know the answer to that one. But we're running to the end of this. Actually, I was talking to Matt, Joe Magician, about the idea of doing sort of maybe a roundup of the show, the series, when it's all over. So it's been a while since I've done sort of having other people on the channel. But it's been nice to get back into that one. Good to see you, by the way, Matt. Joe Magician talking about a glamour. The Ghost of High Heart, aka Jenny's Witch, is very short, albino, and according to Barristan, hideous. Yeah, so that is the Woods Witch who becomes the Ghost of High Heart. Yes, so that's not jumping in there. I assume this is what you're talking about. The seer woman that we see there is not the Ghost of High Heart. The Ghost of High Heart is 3 foot tall, so that's not the same person. But I was going to say something else now. I've completely forgotten what it was. Nope, it's gone. Okay, so I think with that though, I am. It's great to see you, Matt, but you've come literally just when I was about to to log off. So, I'll go and do that. What have we got on? What notices do I need to give? Stuff coming up. Um, do keep an eye on the main channel. I've got a few more videos coming. I've got one on Aryan coming up. And what else have I got? Another Maester Aemon one coming up. It's a mini series I'm doing on Aemon, his early life. Why did he go to the wall? Then we'll have one on what happened to him while he was at the wall, and then probably one about his dragon dreams or something like that. So this was a sort of mini series of videos there, I think. And what else? Yeah, if you find it easier to access my videos from the main channel, check out on other places. Check out Facebook, Spotify, whatever. I'm trying to put them in lots of different places these days. So do go and check that out. If you, well, let's do my thanks again. Thank you, moderators. You are amazing. Thank you, patrons. I hugely appreciate it. Thank you very much. If you are watching this video back a little bit later than on YouTube, then appearing somewhere, nope, here-ish is going to be a link to my other live streams that I've done. Appearing somewhere around here is going to be a link to my Patreon page, which is the best way to support this channel if you wish to do so. In which case, thank you. But that is all for this time. I will be back next week with another same time next week with another live stream. I haven't decided what about, but we'll probably be talking about the Dunc and Egg stuff again. Just about to log off, and then got another super chat. Great Khan, thank you very much, saying, according to George R. R. Martin's world building and writing style, spawning such a wealth of possibilities, do you fear certain fan theories are actually better or more compelling than George's original plan? And I think that's part one of two. But I'll start answering this now. Do I think that do I fear that certain fan theories are actually better or more compelling than George's original plan? Than his original plan? I mean, his original plan, I did a video about that if you're interested. George R. R. Martin thinks he's improved on his original plan through the way that he writes, his gardener style. He's trying different things. So I think he would very happily say that he has improved on his original plan. Do I think that fan theories might be better? And the rest of the question from Great Khan saying, so has it come from George attempting to modify the story to make it work? What's one of your favorite theories that you suspect isn't true but wish was? Well, just to sort of answer the first bit of the question about do I think fan theories are better? I hope not. I don't. All of the kind of the working hypotheses, I prefer to theories, but the working hypotheses that I have about what's going on in the story, all of them are what I think George R. R. Martin is doing with this. I trust him as a writer that if what we have come up with as some ideas about what might be going on is not right, it's because he's come up with something even better. So I've got no problems on that front. What's one of your favorite theories that you suspect isn't true but wish was? What theories do I don't know. That's a tough question. What do I think isn't true but I wish was? I might have to answer that one next time. Sorry, I can't think off the top of my head. I can't think of one. Yeah, remind me next week. I will have a think about that and I will come back to it because I was in the middle of sort of signing off. So let's go back to that one. Thank you again, moderators, patrons, and everyone in the chat. I think it's been really fun live stream. Links and things are here again, and I will see you same time next week. Take care, everyone.